Hey gang, it's your boy Platt, back with another Spirit Series video. We have a couple more videos left in the Spirit Series. These next two videos, I'm going to talk about categories that are just kind of broad, loosely defined categories. They're not necessarily, everything in the categories aren't necessarily spirits, but it's just kind of the best way to put it, I guess. Most of the items that are in these two categories are spirit-based. They are in aperitifs and digestifs. Today we're going to focus in on aperitifs. What is an aperitif? An aperitif is an alcoholic beverage consumed before the meal to stimulate your appetite. In days gone by, in the past, people will eat larger meals, multi-course meals. You would have festivals, celebrations. People would kill an entire evening having a multi-course meal, and you definitely want to stimulate your appetite for a big meal like that. They would also have various alcoholic beverages throughout the meal to kind of fit with what was being served, and the aperitif was kind of the start of that big meal. Aperitifs tend to be dry or bitter instead of sweet. The sweeter drinks tend to be digestifs, which we'll talk about in the next video. But just the dry, the bitterness, supposedly helps, again, generate hunger and appetite. The first mention of aperitifs was in the 5th century. A gentleman named Dubonnet of Photiki in Greece. He was a bishop, and he actually was writing about aperitifs as a kind of warning about these alcoholic beverages, how they stimulated your appetite, and of course there was more implied meaning than just made you hungry, but that these alcoholic beverages would get your juices flowing, get your hunger going, and he warned about that as someone of being a godly person would want to avoid these aperitifs. Aperitifs as a category really didn't take off until the early 1800s in Italy, and eventually caught on through the rest of Europe in the later 1800s. And it kind of makes sense. That was the Victorian age. That was the age of great wealth and extravagance. You had the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts. These people were having lavish balls, celebrations. They had access to all the finest food and spirits and beverages. And so, of course, you would naturally want something, again, to stimulate the appetite before, one of these grand meals. To kind of help define the category, let's go over some examples. Champagne. Champagne's an aperitif, especially dry champagne. Something called pastis. Pastis was kind of the replacement for absinthe when it got banned. Pastis is an anise-flavored liqueur, but it didn't have wormwood, so it was allowed to be sold. Vermouth. Vermouth is an aperitif. Vermouth, if you don't remember from our wine series, is a fortified, aromatized wine. Now, here in the U.S., we kind of use it as a cocktail mixture, either in a martini or a Manhattan, something like that. But in Europe, a lot of times, vermouth, whether sweet or dry, is just consumed on the rocks. Bitter liqueurs like Aperol, Campari come to mind. Campari is a component in the classic cocktail, the Negroni. Gin's an aperitif, and it makes perfect sense because if you have like a gin martini, you're adding dry vermouth. And vermouth, like I said, is already an aperitif. So that kind of makes sense. A good gin martini to kind of stimulate the appetite. Dry sherries and Madeiras, both of those, they're fortified wines. They tend to be on the sweet side, but they do have drier versions, and it's those drier versions that make good aperitifs. A couple of anise-based liqueurs, Raki and Arak. They're both grape spirit-based with the addition of anise flavoring and a little bit of sugar, but they're not overly sweet. Anise-based spirits are big in the Mediterranean area. There's also ouzo, a couple of others. Raki is Turkish-based, or was created in Turkey, and Arak is Lebanese. And last but not least is dry white wines. Dry white wines are great pre-dinner meals. The acidity in a dry white wine hits the side of your tongue, gets the salivary glands going, kind of gets you prepped for that meal. The particular aperitif we're going to try today is Dubonnet Blanc. There's also a Dubonnet Red. 19% alcohol by volume. Similar to vermouth is a good way to think about it. It is a sweet aromatized wine-based aperitif. Vermouth is both sweet and dry. There was two styles. These tend to be more sweet. It's a blend of fortified wine, herbs, spices, and quinine. You want to remember the quinine part. The wine fermentation is stopped with the addition of grape spirit, similar to port. Port will stop the fermentation, and that leaves a lot of excess sugar, makes it real sweet. These aren't going to be as sweet. Also, there's no herbs and spices in the mix with port, so again, this is going to be a little different. Dubonnet was first sold in 1846 by a gentleman named Joseph Dubonnet. He had submitted the recipe to the French government. The French government was looking for a way to get their soldiers quinine. Quinine fought malaria. We talked a little bit last week with absinthe, and then if you remember my gin videos, we talked about how the British, their way of combating malaria was gin and tonics for the troops. The tonic water had quinine in it, and that was their way to battle malaria. The European empires of the time had soldiers throughout the world, India, Africa, South America. Malaria in the jungles was a big deal, so they needed a way to get the soldiers quinine. Dubonnet became the choice for the French government. Dubonnet tends to be served with either a little splash of lemonade or a squeeze of lemon. And that makes sense because the acidity in the lemonade or the squeeze of lemon, again, will hit the side of the tongue, get your mouth salivating, get you ready for the meal. So Dubonnet, especially with that little hit of lemon, perfect aperitif for the meal. Let's give this one a try. All right. Looks a little Chardonnay like color. Kind of a funky nose. Let's try. Sweeter than a typical Chardonnay. Has a Chardonnay body. There's something funky about it. Funky in an old, musty cellar, like you can think of this bottle sitting in an old musty cellar. Definitely gets the tongue salivating. Side of my tongue, the minute I took the hit, I could feel that tongue secreting. Gets the juices flowing. As far as it tastes, it's not bad. I can see where a splash of lemonade. I can see where I would throw this on the rocks, and again, just maybe hit a lemonade or squeeze a lemon. Probably would be a nice pre-meal drink. I don't think I would drink multiple of these. I think it's something, again, just to start off. If you think about a meal, let's say before you get your first appetizer or a soup or a salad like that, hit one of these and then maybe go into your glass of wine. Depending on the course. Depending on the course, you could also do a beer. I'm a big guy who believes that beer can be paired as well as wine on meals. But as far as the aperitif, this is not bad. I would rather have this than the bitter Aperol or Campari. I like the kind of sweet acidic bite rather that bitter. An Aperol spritzer may be a good one. A little champagne, a little Aperol. That could be another possibility too. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.